we'll be doing predictions for four more games of week 9 of this college football season. So starting with Friday night's game, Rutgers at Southern Cal. So Southern Cal is up two-touchdown favorite in this game, and I think that's really crazy because to be honest, this is a toss-up game between two bad teams that is very likely going to be a one-score game. Lincoln Riley, the head coach of USC, I would not want to be the head coach of my team right now, but I would gladly take him to be the offensive coordinator of my team because he is really good at that. And actually, if USC does fire Lincoln Riley after this season, I think Lane Kiffin should try to get him to come over to Ole Miss to be the offensive coordinator because the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss right now I think is terrible, and I've been wanting Kiffin to fire him for years. But Southern Cal has been pretty strange this year. In the LSU game, it really didn't seem like a fluke win for them. It seemed like two good teams playing against each other and that were about even. And Southern Cal was just a little bit better, but that sure hasn't turned out to be the case because since that game, Southern Cal has lost four games and three of them have come against bad teams Michigan, Minnesota, and Maryland. And the best they've played probably since the LSU game was the Penn State game where they lost to them in overtime. And, Penn State is a pretty good team, so that wasn't a bad loss, but USC's offense isn't as good this year because their offensive line is still terrible. It's really the same as it was last year. And Miller Moss is a good quarterback, and you would expect that with Lincoln Riley coaching, but he's not turned out to be as good as Caleb Williams was. And on defense, I think Southern Cal is a little bit better this year than they were last year, but I still don't think they're very good. At times, like in the LSU game, they've looked a whole lot better than they were last year. In the LSU game, when they only gave up 20 points, they actually looked like a good defense, but then at times their defenses actually looked pretty bad like you would expect it to be with Lincoln Riley. Like against Michigan, they gave up 27 points to them, and that was not good because Michigan's offense is pretty much non-existent this year, and they don't have a quarterback that knows how to throw a pass. But that didn't matter against the USC because Michigan just ran the football all over them. And then when they gave up 29 points last week to Maryland, that was not good because Maryland is terrible. And then Rutgers' offense is not very good, but it wasn't expected to be very good. But Rutgers' defense was expected to be very good this year, and it's been a disappointment. It actually doesn't seem to be very good. They gave up 42 points to Wisconsin and then 35 points to UCLA, and neither of those teams have very good offenses. But Rutgers is a physical team, and I think they will win the battle with Southern Cal at the line of scrimmage. And Rutgers does have one really good running back, Kyle Monange, who I think will be a big problem for Southern Cal. I think Rutgers will mainly use him, and I think it will work. I've got Rutgers getting the win over Southern Cal at 28 to 24, but I just have no trust in Southern Cal anymore. And then now the biggest game of the week. LSU at Texas A&M. So when it comes to coaching in this game, I would rank Brian Kelly ahead of Mike Elko right now if I was to make a list of head coaches. But that's because Brian Kelly has so much more experience as a head coach than Elko does. But since Elko has been a head coach, he's done a very good job, I think. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Elko ends up being one of the best college football head coaches. So at quarterback in this game, each team has a good one. It's going to be a good quarterback matchup. Connor Wayman has become a great quarterback for Texas A&M this season, and Garrett Nussmeier, like I said before the season began, is not as good as Jaden Daniels. He doesn't have anywhere near the running abilities or he as good of a passer as Jaden Daniels it, was for LSU, but he is still a very good quarterback. He's done a nice job taking over for Jaden Daniels, and at wide receiver in this game. Each team is in pretty good shape. They've each got several good receivers to throw the football to, but I would give LSU a little bit of an advantage there. So LSU's best receiver is Kyron Lacey, and Texas A&M's best receiver is Noah Thomas. And I think Lacey is a little bit better than Thomas is. And then LSU has a advantage at tight end because they have Mason Taylor, who's an elite tight end. A&M doesn't really have a tight end that I would call great this season. And then at running back, I would give Texas A&M the advantage here. They've got Levon Moss, who is a really good running back, and they've got Amari Daniels, who's a good number two running back for them. And LSU's best running back this season is Caden Durham, who's a freshman. He wasn't the starting running back at the beginning of this season, but he's really come on for them this season and has 2 games of over 100 rushing yards and is averaging 6.2 yards a carry. And then on the line of scrimmage, on the offensive line, I would give LSU a clear advantage. Their offensive line is elite, while Texas A&M's offensive line is much better than last year's. I still wouldn't say it's a great offensive line. But on the defensive line, I would give Texas A&M the advantage because they're deeper. They're loaded with talent on the defensive line. Nick Scorton is their best player, an elite player, but they've also got 2 other really good players on their defensive line, Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart, who are players to watch in this game. They can all get after the quarterback. And then LSU's defensive line, though, is much better than it was last year. It's really the reason why LSU's defense is so much better than it was last year. LSU's defense is not a top 10 defense, but it's a good enough defense now to where if this had been the defense last year, they probably would have won the national championship as good as their offense was last year. Now LSU's offense is not as good though this year as it was last year. Overall, defensively, I'd probably give Texas A&M a little bit of an advantage, but LSU now has 2 really good defensive linemen, Braden Swinson and Savion Jones. Those 2 players are really good run stoppers, and they've become really good pass rushers. They're players to keep an eye on that could get after the quarterback a lot in this game. And then at linebacker, I would probably give LSU a little bit of an advantage, but A&M is in good shape there too. So LSU, I'd say, has the advantage because they've got Greg Penn, who's a elite linebacker that's been there for quite a while now. And then Whit Weeks for LSU at linebacker has really turned into a great linebacker this season. He's really gotten good since Harold Perkins has been out, and now I think he might be their best linebacker. And in the secondary, though, LSU is still having some struggles. Texas A&M, I'd say, has an advantage in the secondary. LSU struggles in the secondary are really at the cornerback position, and they're both though good at safety. So it's really the cornerback position where A&M has the advantage over LSU. But like when LSU played Ole Miss, I think this game will go down to the end, and I think it'll be a similar type of game, more of a defensive game, but I do think there'll be some offense in it, but this time LSU is the road team, so I think they lose this game. I bet Texas A&M getting the win at 23-20 over LSU. And then now Illinois at Oregon. Oregon last week was without three of their best players. Terrence Ferguson at tight end and Rashawn Holden at wide receiver and Jordan Birch on the defensive line. And I saw that Holden is going to be back this week, but Ferguson and Birch are questionable to play. But it's not going to matter in this game. Oregon will win anyway. Oregon's athletes are just so much better than Illinois' are. Now, Illinois is a lot better than they were supposed to be this season, but the truth is they're just not a great team, just a pretty good team. Oregon is a much deeper team, and they've got a huge quarterback advantage. Dylan Gabriel, I think, is a way better quarterback than Luke Altmaier is at Illinois. Oregon, I think, will win this game big. They'll shut down Illinois' offense, and Illinois may slow them down a little bit in this game, but I've got Oregon getting the win 35-7 over Illinois. And then Penn State at Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I think, is probably good enough to compete in this game. Wisconsin is a decent team. They're 5-2, and Penn State, even though they're 6-0, their best win so far is against Illinois. Penn State, even though I've got them in my top five, right now. I don't think they're an actual top five team. I think really they're a borderline top 10 team. But I think Wisconsin is at best a borderline top 25 team, and Penn State is just much more talented, and uh, I think they're better than Wisconsin both offensively and defensively, and I think Wisconsin will be able to keep it close for most of the game, but I think Penn State pulls away late and wins it by a couple of scores. I've got Penn State getting the win at 27-17 over Wisconsin. So that will be it with this video. Please subscribe and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.